I want you to approach the questions I'm about to ask with a very open mind, because it's going to sound radical, but it's going to bring up an incredible point. You know, what defines horrible, shitty experiences? Why do we fear certain things happening? Why is something considered bad that happens to us? You know, is there a list, almost a naughty and nice list that defines what is good and what is bad? Is there a handbook that's given out in the first grade that defines, hey, you don't want this to happen to you, but this is cool? That's never really, you know, disposed upon us. We're never really given that. So what you quickly realize is we collectively define bad, poor, shitty experiences. And our reflection on something actually determines whether we enjoy it or not. You know, it's similar to food. There are some people that love milk and cheese and things of that nature. But if you're like me, you fucking hate it. That doesn't make milk or cheese or anything inherently bad, unless of course you're vegan, right? But it's my personal preference on it. So why can't we take that same approach to bad, shitty, tough, you know, not so enjoyable experiences? Now, there are three that stand out to me personally in my life that have cultivated some of my best growth and personal development that I now look back on as not horrible things that have happened to me, but actually incredibly positive ones. And if I would have realized that in the moment, it would have changed everything. And now that's how I approach everything. So the first of which was a young high school Jake, and I've been in a relationship for 3 years, I think, which is way too long to be in a relationship in high school. And I found out my girlfriend at the time was cheating with actually my best friend. Now, you know, initially at the time, I was devastated. I was totally like distraught. You guys know me, like I'm always pretty confident. So it was a major ego hit, which I used to not know how to handle at all. And it was what I thought like the worst possible thing that can happen. Literally like physically, mentally just draining. Yet what stemmed from that was I actually really got on course with myself and who I wanted to be. And that probably would have never happened if I stayed just in a relationship attached with someone else. So that became an incredibly positive moment. And I'm so glad now looking back on that happened. I actually thank both of those people that made that happen. Now, the next one was actually, you know, only about half a year later. And I had grown up playing basketball all the time. I'll still, you know, fuck you up at the gym if I need to. And I'll take anyone one-on-one. But I was a big basketball player, but I never really did any of the team stuff. And long story short, I actually got cut from the team my junior year. And I went into the tryout literally hoping to become a starter on the varsity team because it was kind of wide open that year, but a lot of people trying out. So that was a devastating moment for me. This sport I had played my whole life and worked for completely went away, and now I would never get to play that again at the level that I was hoping to do. So I thought that was a super negative. I was, you know, pissed off. I was, you know, I could not even describe how I felt in that moment. Yet then what happened beyond that was I actually got on this major fitness tirade and started taking my personal health to an extreme level. Gained 35 pounds of muscle in like 90 days. It was insane. Really started working out at the gym, getting the rest of, you know, personal development. All those things started kicking into gear. And I ultimately transformed into what I would consider still like a fucking 16, 17-year-old boy into like a 17-year-old, more of a man, you know, obviously not experienced or wise, but more of the built mental toughness that was needed. And so that, now looking back on it, was one of the most positive experiences to happen to me. Now, the third and final one that has happened thus far was actually breaking my jaw. It was about 4 or 5 weeks into my freshman year at the University of Kansas, and I was actually, you know, living in a fraternity house, and long story short, fell, slipped, hit my chin, broke my jaw in 7 places, Not ideal, wouldn't recommend breaking the jaw. Had my jaws wired shut for about 90 days, couldn't go to any of my classes, had to like drop like half my credit hours, obviously missed like, you know, a month away from my pledge brothers at the time, and kind of missed the Greek life things of that nature. And I thought that was the most awful experience. Yet during the middle of that period, I soon discovered, I started looking back on the things in the past that had been real movers for me. And literally in the middle of that process with my jaws wired shut, I realized, wait a sec, this is gonna turn into one of the most positive things to ever happen to me. So I decided that then, and 2 weeks later, with my jaws still wired shut at the time, I signed my first ever paying consistent monthly client. Before then we had done some stuff here and there, but at that moment, TrndsttrsMedia was reborn. I went headfirst into entrepreneurship, continued to balance that with school, and that is the sole reason. I mean, ultimately, look, I would have started some shit, but that is the sole reason TrndsttrsMedia exists where it is today, because that's how it was ultimately founded. It was upon that moment and signing the client with my jaws wired shut, couldn't even communicate. I would be like, drawing shit on the fucking whiteboard. Turned out to be one of the most positive experiences of my life. Now I bring all this up to highlight, you know, a serious point, that your number one responsibility as a human being, not a superhero, is to turn negative experiences into positive ones. And this is not something that anecdotally is proven true. This is proven true at the largest levels. In fact, Google did a study of every single one of their employees. There's probably a fucking million Google employees, right? And those are some of the top talent, right? And of those Google employees, they studied what were the key success indicators in their career. Those that were continually moving up in the career, finding success in their role, and so on. And definitively, the number one success factor was not if they had a Harvard MBA, it wasn't if they went to an Ivy League school, it wasn't if they grew up with rich parents or poor parents, or they grew up in this suburb, or they were from this country, or if they were attractive, or if they were a good leader. It was none of those. Definitively what it was if they carried a chip on their shoulder at all times. That was the 100%, without a doubt, number one indicator of success. And so when I think about your own personal development, growth in business, in marketing, in your career, in your first job, in whether you're a student, what you need to do is carry that chip on your shoulder, find those negative experiences and turn them into positive ones.